Let's get into the money. I'm going to be reading that skinny boy Django Morrison in a minute. Let's get to the money. We got to talk about this Google antitrust lawsuit that the federal government recently won. Make sure y'all hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications. Let's rock.
Breaking news this hour, a federal judge has just ruled against Google in a massive antitrust lawsuit. That suit involves its core business, online searches. NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung is here to help unpack all of this. Brian, this is a big win for regulators, right? Because they have been trying to argue that there was a monopoly here.
Is the light slow, Molly? Is the light slow, Ari? Is the light slow, Azrael? Is the light slow, K. Cooper? Don't tell me that the likes is too low. Come on, man. What y'all doing? Y'all know that we do what we do over here. You know that we put full energy and maximum effort into what we doing over here. What you stingy with your like button? Come on, man.
Google.
Yeah, and by the way, we're still poring over this 286-page document from the District of Columbia. Really, this is a massive antitrust ruling that the judge in this case is turning onto the Sherman Act. This is basically an antitrust law that we've heard in the context of a big landmark case against Microsoft in 2001, now being used against Google here. And this judge found that there were basically two areas where Google was basically engaging in antitrust: search and text advertising, that they basically controlled the monopoly. They said it for the search engine. They were basically coercing companies into making Google the default search engine and not giving them much choice to go elsewhere, simply because of the massive scale that they have on advertising dollars. And on text advertising, they pointed to a pretty jarring stat that in 2020, its market share in that market was 88%. So you have Ahmed Mehta, the judge, saying, quote, Google is a monopolist and has acted as one to maintain its monopoly. This is a huge win for the 38 states and territories that were on this suit. What happens next? We don't know. Could there be injunctions? Could there be criminal fines potentially? We'll have to see. But the stock is down almost 4.5% on a day that's already been pretty bad for Wall Street.
So I don't think that Google's stock is down because first and foremost, they're going to appeal the decision. So let me break this down from a C student's perspective, right? Apple and Samsung, for example, they make a lot of money. And when I say a lot of money from Google in particular. So Google pays billions. And when I say billions, I'm saying tens of billions of dollars every single year to be the default search engine of Apple devices, which includes iPhones, iPads, Samsung devices, which includes whatever it is that you're looking at it on a Samsung device. And so when you then type in something in the search bar, or let's just say, for example, you go to Safari and you open up Safari and you start to type stuff in the search bar, not even in the search bar, you start typing it in general, and then by default, it automatically shows you results on Google. So Google has basically become synonymous with search. They become synonymous with search. People don't look to use other browsers when they're trying to figure stuff out. As a matter of fact, we just say, let's Google it. Let's Google it. And so they pay and they make sure that they stay relevant when it comes to people using their browsers, because ultimately what that translates into is profits when it comes to ad revenue, AdSense, and all of that stuff. So largely a part of the $300 billion that they generate on an annual basis primarily comes from content, search, all of that, right? And so because they pay this money and they spend money on other companies in order to stay relevant when it comes to you guys using their platform in order to find out whatever it is that you need to find out, the Justice Department is trying to prevent that from happening while also incentivizing competition. So they want other players to be relevant or just as competitive as Google. And so what they did was they sued Google in an antitrust suit, saying that they were a monopoly and they were preventing competition, which is what you're supposed to do in a way. They were preventing competition from being able to compete against them by spending an extraordinary amount of money for advertising space or space on devices that ultimately default searched you or default sent you into their search engine, right? But Google's argument was, listen, how is this any different than going into a grocery store and certain brands pay for space on shelves to the grocery stores in order to be eye level in the middle of whatever it is that's there. They spend on marketing, they spend on advertisement, and then they also pay grocery store owners and grocery stores in order to have that shelf space or on the end caps, because they understand that people buy things more often off of eye level. So when you go into a grocery store, you're less likely to look up, you're less likely to look down, you're more likely to look right in front of you and grab the thing that you're most familiar with, that they've already advertised for you, and then you also just grab that thing off the shelf. And so their argument is, we're investing and continuing to make money on our platforms. We're not preventing competition, and we're not a monopoly. We're just making sure that we invest in what it is that people, now if people want to use another option, there are other options out there. So are you telling us that we're not supposed to compete and be the best company at what we do and what we generate the majority of our resources and thriving in this economic engine? And that is the difference between the two. It's two different arguments. And so the a judge ruled against Google in this antitrust suit, but it's not the end of it, right? And so Google's going to appeal. And of course, they're going to take it up to a further decision, and it's going to be in court for a long time. And then if, for example, the judge then rules, or it goes up and then they uphold whatever the original judgment from this judge that ruled against Google in this antitrust suit, what will then happen is they're not going to pay a fine. It's not going to be anything like that. It's not a traditional lawsuit. They would have to start to evaluate how they wanted to impose how Google was supposed to run their business in order to make it more competitive for the general market. So the federal government is saying competition is good, and this is good for other companies in society in order to have other options for people to be able to choose where they want to search and if they want to use Google, instead of being marketed and advertised to and then subjectively having you search on Google and then making that just a part of your normal everyday routine and ecosystem. And that is the heart of it from a C student's perspective. That's the heart of why this lawsuit is taking place in the first place. And it's literally taking years in order for this to go through.
At the top of the hour about how bad this day is already in the stock market. So essentially this means the judge is saying Google went to other companies, like other phone companies, and made deals that they were going to use the Google search.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I would not understand a monopoly. I'm breaking down to you the lawsuit. You know what really is a monopoly? I could tell you where the monopolies are. It's a lot of real monopolies that's really happening out in these streets. Energy companies a lot of times hold a monopoly in your cities. There is no competition, and they own the power lines. Absolutely, 100%. But let me continue. I don't want to get into that. And it hasn't been a major antitrust suit, I don't think, since what, the 90s? The 90s?
I mean, when you think about on all the devices that we have, if you're on a Mac, if you're on a browser, it's the software as well. In many cases, Google is the default browser. They're alleging that the way that they made themselves a default browser through some of these deals and agreements is antitrust.
And has Google said anything to this point?
Google has not responded. We did reach out to a request for comment. They haven't said anything so far, but we'll have to see, and we'll be keeping our ear to the ground.
Is it too soon to ask if this changes how we used to use Google as a verb, Brian. Is this going to change how we search?
Well, I mean, you would imagine that Google's defense to this would be, well, maybe our market share is so large because we're just the best search engine and we offer the best text ads that are out there. And they have argued
that in court.
Absolutely, I do think that they are the best search engine. 100%. I think that they are the best search engine. I think that we all can agree that they are the best search engine.
Have argued that, but again, this judge didn't seem to agree with that. The real big question here, Kate, is what can be done about this, right? Google is already a massive company among other tech giants. What can be done here? We don't know. We'll have to see whether or not there's any sort of penalties, injunctions, or et cetera.
All right, Brian.
Let me see if I can get another view of this just to make sure that we capturing this from every angle.
A federal judge has ruled against Google in a major antitrust case. It says the company acted illegally to maintain a monopoly of its search engine. For more, CBS News legal contributor and Loyola Law School professor Jessica Levinson joins us now. Jessica, good to see you. I think the numbers I saw were that Google has, 90% of the online searches overall and 95% if you're talking mobile. And the Justice Department is basically saying that they're charging these artificially high prices and getting lazy about searches and not really investing because everybody uses them anyway. Is that right?
That's exactly right. That they are engaging in a monopoly here, that they're violating antitrust laws because they're boxing out competitors when it comes to their search engines, that they are paying billions of dollars to Apple, to Samsung to say, make us the automatic, the default search engine on your browser, on your smartphone. And that by doing that, they're boxing out the competition, that nobody else can basically scale up and compete with Google when it comes to that search engine capacity. And so this is a case that deeply affects our ability to get information and how we get information. This is separate from, although, as you said, somewhat related to, it's separate from a different action dealing with Google and how it shows ads. And it, again, trying to box out competitors with respect to advertising.
I'm going to make myself feel old.
So it's an interesting dynamic because on one hand, I can't imagine Apple and Samsung not taking all of those billions of dollars in order to have them as a default when they decide to do it. But so Apple would lose, Samsung would lose, and I'm not sure that Google would lose because I don't know that people would then. Listen, I'm gonna be honest with you, and I love Microsoft. I'm invested in Microsoft. I think that Microsoft is possibly one of the best companies that I've ever invested in my entire life. But I've never used Bing ever. And I tried to use Bing a couple different times on the work computer, and it just wasn't a good experience for me. It just wasn't a good experience. I mean, the results is just not nice. I use Yahoo. Yahoo search results are abysmal. I get it. They control 90% of the market, and a lot of people would consider them a monopoly. But what's the alternative? Some people said that they use DuckDuckGo. I don't see nobody else saying that Bing. Some people are saying DuckDuckGo is a browser for scammers. I don't know what the alternative is. Yahoo search is trash, man. Bing isn't that bad. I don't know, man. It's just, I'm never going to use anything but Google, so I'm pretty sure that they're going to control 90% of the market. Maybe they're going to have a conversation about how they can break the company up. I don't know. But ladies and gentlemen, that's what's going on with Bing and its search on that type of front. Let me